Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where all of our advocates are tuning in from. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for our advocacy training, our 2020 webinar. This is our 8th Advocacy Day, and we are super excited to be going back to Washington, D.C. So first, I want to take this opportunity to thank our chairs, Melanie Vincelli and Christy Leonard, both board members and very active prep mentors and volunteers and chapter leaders that have taken countless hours to make this event possible and continue to go back every year. Melanie is an 11-year survivor, stage 4 survivor, pictured on the left, and Christy, the picture on the right, and pictured to the left of Debbie, continues to go to Advocacy Day every year in honor of her husband, now Tony, who passed away 1 year ago today. So thank you to our chairs who are working tirelessly throughout this process, and we look forward to seeing them at Advocacy Day. I also want to thank our brown sponsors, Stupid Strong, No Stomach for Cancer, and the Gastric Cancer Foundation for supporting Debbie's Dream Foundation's Advocacy Day this year. With their support, we're able to bring the most advocates to DC than ever before. And maybe I should have introduced myself before. I am Britt, Ehren, Programs Director for Debbie's Dream Foundation. We'll go over the agenda a little bit. Obviously, this is our introduction. I'm going to introduce the foundation a little bit and talk to you about Advocacy Day and our agenda, and then we'll be joined by Camille Bonta, our advocacy consultant, who will conduct the advocacy portion of the training. So you can ask questions during the presentation. There's an opportunity to type your questions into the text box that appears on your screen, and then at the conclusion of the presentation, Camille will be able to address the questions if there's time that allows for it. If we're unable to answer any of your questions during the time allotted, we will respond in an email to advocates, and of course you can always email our office. We'll provide all of our information at later slides also. So also the recording of the webinar will be accessible for all of the advocates on the Advocate Resource Center on our website, and we'll provide the link in an email as well as on the social media Facebook page as well. So of course we want to make sure that you're joining the Facebook page so you can get all the up-to-date information on there as well. So a little bit about our mission. Debbie's Dream Foundation is dedicated to raising awareness about stomach cancer, advancing funding for research, and providing education and support internationally and nationally to patients, families, and caregivers. Our ultimate goal is to make the cure for stomach cancer a reality. So you can learn more about by visiting our website at wsdream.org. I'm going to go over a few of our milestones that we've hit over the last few short years. So DDF has achieved many great milestones thanks to our late founder. We have 29 chapters across the U.S., as well as chapters in Canada and Germany, and events are ongoing around the country. Our patient resource and education program helps patients, family members, caregivers around the world by matching them with survivors and other caregivers using disease-specific criteria, including stage, biomarker, and location. We host educational webinars and symposia year-round, and on our website we have a lot of in-depth information. It's our bread and butter about stomach cancer that can be also translated into more than 60 languages. Now, as of last year, 2019, we have provided $1 million in research grants, and we will award more research dollars to fund in 2020. So we advocated during our stomach cancer Capitol Hill Advocacy Day, and as many of you know, we've added stomach cancer to the Department of Defense's peer-reviewed cancer research program, and each year, like this year, we're returning to Washington to maintain funding for research. Just a few of our wonderful advocates with some of their representatives. These are pictures from last year. So over the years, hundreds of advocates have traveled to Capitol Hill to ask Congress to invest more federal resources in stomach cancer research. Specifically, Congress was asked to include stomach cancer among those cancers eligible for research funding under the, as we said, the DoD's peer-reviewed cancer research program, the PRCRP, which you'll hear more about, and we won. Since fiscal year 2015, millions of dollars have been awarded to stomach cancer researchers, and none of this would have happened without DDF advocates on Capitol Hill meeting with their members of Congress each year. So there's still so much more to be done, which is why we continue to go every year, and your participation in 2020 Advocacy Day is so important. As you can see here, this was one of the group photos from last year, so your participation can definitely help change the course of stomach cancer, gastric cancer research in this country. So just to go over a little bit of the itinerary for Monday, a lot of you are either traveling on Sunday or Monday. So there will be a meet and greet that starts at about 1 o'clock with lunch included, and then we'll be doing welcoming and award presentations from 3:30 to 4. Camille will be doing her presentation on the PRCRP. And then we'll have a brief overview, slideshow more about DDF, and then a sit-down dinner is served at 6:30. And then we'll be doing presentations, role-playing with small groups. Melanie and Christy will be working with other experienced advocates to talk about what they've experienced, how to answer questions, and it really gives advocates an opportunity to ask questions that they might have during that time. On Tuesday on the Hill, we asked for attire that you are dressed in business professional in either blue or neutral colors, wearing comfortable walking shoes, obviously keeping in mind the weather for that day and dressing appropriately for the weather. It's an early breakfast, 7 a.m. to 8 a.m., and then the buses leave promptly from the hotel at 8 a.m. At 8:15, as you saw in 2 slides ago, we'll be doing the group photo on the steps of Capitol Hill, as well as state and individual photos as well. And then your day on the Hill is from 9 to 5. When you do have a lunch break, the lunch will be on your own. Then there will be a break from 5 to 6, and then DDF will be hosting an Advocacy Day celebration dinner from 6 to 9. As far as photography and videography, we will have a photographer and videographer at all times during the event. So upon arrival, we want to make sure that all participants, advocates, need to sign a media release form. That way that all of your pictures can be shared. As far as hotel information, if you applied for a scholarship, you will be receiving an information by Friday. We do have a room block. About 2 weeks out before will be the deadline for booking. Here's the information to make a reservation, and you can also call or email us if you have any questions about making a hotel arrangement as well. I'd like to turn the presentation over to Camille. So Camille is from Summit Consulting, and she will be providing us with more information about Advocacy Day and the event. Camille's been with Debbie's Dream Foundation since the beginning of Advocacy Day, so this is her 8th year with us. She knows us very well, and she's very excited to be working with us again and coming back to the Hill and educating all of the advocates on what to expect. So Camille, I'll turn the presentation over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Britt. And thank you all for joining today's webinar, and thank you for being part of Debbie's Dream Foundation's advocacy efforts, and certainly taking time away from your families and work to travel to Washington, D.C. in February. Next slide, please. You are the voice of stomach cancer, and when you go to Capitol Hill on February 11th, you are going to be increasing awareness for stomach cancer through your own stories and your own experiences. And you're going to be educating members of Congress and their staff about the lack of foundational knowledge about stomach cancer and why more research is necessary. And you'll be asking for funding so that research can lead to better treatments, diagnostic tools, and hopefully someday a cure. Next slide. We are scheduling your meetings on Capitol Hill, and those meetings are being scheduled based upon your registration information. This year, you will be divided into teams based on the state where you live, and your final meeting schedules will be provided to you when you arrive in Washington, D.C. And our goal is to send you a list of lawmakers that you are going to be scheduled to meet with, and we're going to do that in advance of your coming to Washington, D.C., so you will have time to familiarize yourself with the lawmakers that you will be meeting with prior to your arriving in Washington, D.C. You're also going to get a lot of background materials. You're going to get them when you arrive in DC, but they will also be posted on the Debbie's Dream Foundation website, and you'll receive a notification when those materials have been posted. So you can take a look at them before you leave and begin to prepare for your Hill meetings. And also, once you arrive in DC and prior to going to the Hill, you're going to receive folders with fact sheets and other materials that you'll provide to the congressional offices when you meet with them. Next slide. Now, you may be wondering, what do I wear when I go to Capitol Hill? It's business casual, so we're going to ask men to wear a jacket and a button-down shirt and a tie, and women can wear a suit and wear pants and a sweater or a dress. Just business professional. We just ask that you don't wear jeans and try to avoid anything like big belt buckles or large pieces of metal jewelry that might slow you down going through security on Capitol Hill. Similar to airport screening. Please, as Britt already said, wear comfortable shoes because you are going to be doing a lot of walking on Tuesday. You're also going to get a lapel pin to wear and to distribute to members of Congress and their staff. And also, as in years past, you'll be encouraged to wear periwinkle or some shade of blue so you can be dressed appropriately for our photo on Capitol Hill. So now we are going to move to the Hill meetings. Next slide, please. So meeting with a member of Congress doesn't need to be a stressful ordeal as long as you're prepared and you know what you're going to say. And you can keep the discussion on message. And on Monday, the program is going to include an advocacy training, as Britt was saying, that will be led by me and my colleague, Megan. Now, it's always important to stay on message. And while members of Congress and their staff are genuinely concerned about their constituents' views, they often don't like to commit to requests on the spot. So it's going to be up to you to stay on message, to press your request politely yet firmly. And when you sit down to talk to a staff person or a member of Congress in your meeting, you're going to start by introducing yourself, right? It's so easy to sit down and then just jump right into what you want them to do. But you need to introduce yourself. So make sure you say where you live and that you're visiting on behalf of Debbie's Dream Foundation. And if this is a repeat visit with a lawmaker or a congressional staffer, remind them that you met before. Maybe there's something from that meeting, the last time that you met with them that you want to highlight that might jog their memory. So after the introductions, you're going to tell your story. You're going to explain what led you to becoming an advocate for stomach cancer research and why you decided to travel to Washington, D.C. Next slide. Now, before you state what action you want the member of Congress to take, it's important to take an opportunity to say thank you if it's appropriate. Now, when you get all your background information, in those materials, there's going to be a list of lawmakers who have been helpful to Debbie's Dream Foundation in the past by signing the request for inclusion of stomach cancer in the peer-reviewed cancer research program. So you're going to review that list to determine whether a thank you is in order when you sit down with that congressional office. Now, when making your request, you may decide to use facts and figures to make your point, but don't overwhelm the lawmaker or the staffer with too much data. You're going to have folders with fact sheets to provide the congressional offices, which will be full of numbers and details. while you're face-to-face with the lawmaker or the staffer, it's important for you to use your story as a tool of persuasion. That's why you're there. Next slide. Now, before you end your meeting, we want you to close the deal, right? We're going to ask the member of Congress or the staffer if they will support your request. Now, if they can't give you an on-the-spot answer, sometimes that will happen. Most of the time, it won't. Just, kindly let them know that you will be following up after you head home from Washington. And then lastly, remember to say thank you. Make sure that they have your contact information and offer to be a resource to them. Next slide. There are a few key facts and figures that will be helpful to have at the ready when you go to your Hill meetings. Now, based on the data that is released annually by the American Cancer Society, it is estimated this year that more than 27,000 Americans will be diagnosed with stomach cancer and 11,000 will die from the disease. Now, as you probably all know, the vast majority of patients are asymptomatic during the early stages of stomach cancer, and as a result, it often leads to a late diagnosis. And you all know that the statistics at later stage are not good. The 5-year survival rate is 5%, and the overall at stage 4, the 5-year survival rate is 5%, and that the overall 5-year survival rate is 32%. Next slide. Now, I want to show you these tables, and they demonstrate that deaths associated with stomach cancer have declined over about the past 85 years. And this decline is associated with a reduction in the prevalence of H. pylori infection, which is responsible for the majority of non-cardiac stomach cancer. Now, for those of you who have stomach cancer or have lost someone to the disease, this decline really means nothing to you, right? This is where your story matters. But I want you to be prepared to answer questions about the prevalence of disease. And one thing I do want to highlight is that while we see this significant decline over the past 80 plus years in stomach cancer mortality, data from the North American Association of Central Cancer Tumor Registries predicts that by 2030, the overall incidence in non-cardiac gastric cancer will no longer be decreasing, and that cardiac stomach cancer, which was once uncommon, is also rising in incidence. So what this all boils down to is that while we see a decline, we're seeing some troubling early trends, and this translates into a need for more research to understand these early trends. We also know that rates of incidence and mortality associated with stomach cancer is higher in ethnic and minority populations, and this is a point that you can highlight, and it will be detailed in the fact sheets depending on the office that you're visiting. Some data like that may resonate more with a member of Congress that is in a very urban area, or for example, a member of Congress that is of a particular ethnic or racial background. Next slide. So now let's turn to what we are asking Congress to do this year. Our primary request this year, which has been in the past, is to ask members of Congress to support maintaining the inclusion of stomach cancer in the Department of Defense's peer-reviewed cancer research program. But first, I want to talk about what the peer-reviewed cancer research program is for those of you who may not be familiar with it. Next slide. The vision of the program is to transform healthcare for service members and the public through innovative and impactful research. And the program also engages the community through its review process. And you see pictured here Debbie Zellman and Brandy Carrasco, who served in the important roles of reviewers within the program. And next slide. Now, the peer-reviewed cancer research program was first created in fiscal year 2009. and it supports research into cancers that are specifically designated by Congress. Military health is a priority, and that includes environmental exposures and risks as well as mission readiness. And when the Department of Defense thinks about mission readiness, it's also thinking about the health of the family members of service members. So the opportunities for research to fit into the program's vision is actually much broader than just looking at the servicemen and women. Now, as I mentioned, the program is run through the Department of Defense, and it's under the umbrella of the bigger congressionally directed medical research programs. And because the research topics can change from year to year, because Congress decides what gets included, this is why it's so important for stomach cancer advocates to come to Capitol Hill every year to defend stomach cancer's inclusion in the program. Now, sometimes congressional staff will ask why we need the program when the National Institutes of Health is conducting research. And it's important to understand that research funded by the Peer Reviewed Cancer Research Program is a complement to the research being conducted at the National Institutes of Health. But more importantly, it offers researchers an avenue to pursue under-researched cancers and to create a community of researchers in areas where the science isn't mature. And this is one of the most significant benefits of the Peer Reviewed Cancer Research Program. Next slide. Now, thanks to advocacy over the past few years, there has been a significant increase in the amount of funding appropriated by Congress to the program. And in fact, the program's budget has grown to $110 million this year. That's not insignificant by any stretch. And thanks to our collective efforts, stomach cancer was first included as eligible for research funding in fiscal year 2015, and stomach cancer has remained eligible ever since. And thanks single-handedly, really, to the advocacy of this organization, $17.4 million through 34 awards has been allocated to stomach cancer research. And that's just in the first 4 years of the program, just fiscal year 2015 through 2018. So we haven't calculated, because it's not available yet, fiscal year 2019 funding. Next slide. Now, this is a great graphic, and we've asked for booklets from the Department of Defense that has all this information in here that you'll be able to hand out during your meetings. This table shows just how significant the funding amount that stomach cancer has gotten through the peer-reviewed cancer research program is. So you're going to see here that funding for stomach cancer research has constituted 6% of the program's research portfolio in just those 4 years. Now, keep in mind that some of the cancers in this portfolio have been in the program much longer than stomach cancer. And what this demonstrates so clearly is that there was a great unmet demand for funding dollars for stomach cancer research, and the role that the Peer Reviewed Cancer Research Program is playing to fill that need. Next slide. So what is our ask to our members of Congress? Our ask is going to be that they support maintaining the inclusion of stomach cancer in the Peer Reviewed Cancer Research Program in fiscal year 2021. And we'd also like an increase in funding for the program overall. One way that your members of Congress are going to be able to support your request is by signing a letter to the Appropriations Defense Subcommittee. And that letter will be led again in the House by our longtime champion, Representative Lois Frankel of Florida, and Representative Adam Kinzinger from Illinois. And again, this year, the letter in the Senate will be led by Senator Mazi Hirono from Hawaii, and final or draft copies of those letters will be in the folders that you take to Capitol Hill. Next slide. One of the most persuasive arguments that we can make for inclusion of stomach cancer in the program is that due to past and present deployments, U.S. service members and veterans may have an increased risk of stomach cancer. especially if they're diagnosed with H. pylori. And as we all know, H. pylori is one of the primary identified causes of stomach cancer. So when military servicemen and women go overseas in certain countries, the risk of H. pylori is much higher than what it is in the United States. Or, for example, if you have a bunch of Marines who are or Navy, naval shipmen who are on a boat together, the opportunity to contract H. pylori just because of the living conditions are much greater. Okay, next slide. So when we go to Capitol Hill to talk about medical research funding, we have to acknowledge and support the important role of the National Institutes of Health, and specifically the National Cancer Institute. Next slide. Now, the good news is that Congress has been very supportive of cancer research. And as you can see here, the National Cancer Institute's budget has been steadily going up over the last several years. Next slide. And as a result, as the NCI's budget goes up, as we see here in this graph, so does the number of research applications, right? So the researchers follow the money. And put quite simply, the demand is still outpacing funding. So there's still a number of research proposals that get submitted to the NCI, but there simply isn't enough funding to support all the good research ideas that are out there. Next slide. So last week, I had an opportunity to sit down with the director of the National Cancer Institute, Dr. Ned Sharpless, and he took some time to outline what he sees as some of the broad challenges at the National Cancer Institute. And he said that while there has been great progress in cancer research, he acknowledged that progress is definitely uneven. And as I was just talking about, the competition of funding deters researchers. Clinical trials is still a big challenge for the NCI and getting people to enroll in clinical trials. And then, another challenge that falls a little bit outside the scope of what we're on the Hill talking about, but important nonetheless, is that research is resulting in life-saving therapies, but it's very difficult for individuals to afford some of those expensive therapies. But one thing he really emphasized is that NCI's progress and the increase in funding are greatly aided by a supportive cancer research community. So it's really important for us not just to talk about the peer-reviewed cancer research program, but to talk about the great value in seeing consistent funding increases at the National Cancer Institute, and why it's so important for Congress to maintain that commitment as well. So next slide. Every year, the entire research community comes together and they decide how much money they believe Congress should appropriate to the National Institutes of Health for any given fiscal year. So for next year, they've arrived at a funding level of $44.7 billion, which would be a $3 billion increase from the current fiscal year. And of that amount, the request is $6.9 billion for the National Cancer Institute. That is a proportionate increase across institutes and centers, which is about a $50 million increase. Next slide. And one thing I want to highlight for you is the report language that was included in the report that accompanied the Labor, Health, and Human Services spending bill this year. And you all should give yourselves a big pat on the back, because this is thanks to your advocacy work, the compelling stories and need that you have conveyed to congressional staffers. And this report language is extraordinarily strong. And what it does is it directs the National Cancer Institute to develop a scientific framework using the process outlined in the Recalcitrant Cancer Act of 2012 for stomach and esophageal cancer. Further, NCI is directed to provide an update on this NCI-supported research in its fiscal year 2021 congressional justification that will probably be coming out in the next couple months. And NCI is directed to add esophageal and stomach cancers to future research condition and disease categorization reports so we can see where funding is going. We have had ongoing conversations with the NCI around developing a scientific framework. This is going to hopefully push them more aggressively in that direction. And the value of the scientific framework is that it allows for researchers and the NCI to come together and determine what funding priorities are within stomach cancer. And that will hopefully lead to more dollars going to stomach cancer research and certainly funding the right research. So scientific frameworks have already been done for pancreatic cancer, and they have been done for small cell lung cancer. And this, if being able to accomplish this would represent a huge milestone for stomach cancer. Next slide. So when we go to the Hill, we want to be sure to thank members of Congress for supporting increased funding for the National Cancer Institute, and that we want increased funding of $3 billion to the NIH and a commensurate increase to the National Cancer Institute. But we also want to express to lawmakers that we are encouraged by the report language that was in last year's spending bill, directing the NCI to develop a scientific framework, and that we look forward to working with the NCI and with Congress to make sure that the report language directive is fulfilled. And there's not a specific ask here, but the goal here is just to be talking about it, to say, this was really great, we thank you very much, and we are paying really close attention to what happens in the future. Because if the National Cancer Institute doesn't fulfill this directive, we're going to come back around and we're going to say, hey, remember this, we haven't seen any progress. So it's important to make them aware of this if they aren't, in case we need to come back later and have a conversation with them about it. Next slide, please. So the bottom line message is that with more stomach cancer research, we will have better survival rates in the future, and hopefully better diagnostic tools to prevent the diagnosis of stomach cancer at late stage. Next slide. Now, between now and coming to DC, you have some homework to do. You have set your advocate story for the packets that we will be giving out to congressional members and staff. So thank you very much for doing that. We want you to review the Advocacy Day materials and talking points. And again, once all those materials are posted, we will let you know, and you can go to the Debbie's Dream Foundation website and pull those down. We are going to be giving you a list of the members of Congress that you can be expected to meet with, either them or their staff. And when you get that list, you can go to their webpage and just familiarize yourself a bit with them. Okay, so if they're not in your district, what district are they in? What is there anything there that you can make a connection with that lawmaker? Oh, my cousin lives in your district, or I went to college in your district. So try to find something that will allow you to maybe connect with that member of Congress, but at a minimum, you just want to take a look at their picture so you know what they look like in case they walk in the door and you're sitting in the lobby. You can jump up and introduce yourself, just little things like that. Now, if you have business cards, bring them with you so you can hand them out in your meetings so staff know how to reach you if they have questions. I'm going to say one more time to pack comfortable shoes. This is nobody's out there to impress anybody with their attire on Capitol Hill. You want to be comfortable, so be sensible. And what I really want you to do is to get excited about joining your fellow advocates and making a difference on Capitol Hill. You're gonna go up there and you're gonna have great conversations, and you are gonna feel so energized. And I'm gonna want you to take that energy back home with you and follow up and help us meet our goal is getting as many members of Congress signed on to those letters or submitting requests in support of stomach cancer research to the Appropriations Committee, because our end goal is to see stomach cancer included in the peer-reviewed cancer research program, and to see more dollars being allocated by Congress for cancer research and stomach cancer research specifically. And as Britt was saying, we're going to give you suggested posts that you can use on Facebook and Twitter. But let's create a big buzz on social media out to our friends and families and policymakers about being on Capitol Hill. When we all sit down in DC, we'll go over a few do's and don'ts with respect to social media and being on Capitol Hill. But if you don't have a Twitter account set up, maybe that would be something to do before you head to Washington. So with that, I am going to conclude my portion of the presentation, and I think this is where Britt would like to open it up for any questions that anyone on the call may have.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Camille. That was a very informative presentation. And as Camille said, there will be much more information that's provided. This is just a brief overview for everybody. There will be a lot of presentations to make you feel, more comfortable on the Hill, role-playing and, small groups that way that you don't feel that you are not prepared. So everybody will be prepared for meetings. So I'm going to read some of the questions and some of the, commonly asked questions so that Camille can answer those. So one of the questions is, how do I follow up after my meetings?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what we will do is we will send out a template email that you can personalize for following up with the offices that you met with. Now, you may decide to coordinate with your group on how you want to respond to those offices. What we don't want to have happen is everyone sending the same template follow-up to the same congressional staffer that you all met with. So that's something that you can coordinate with. But we will be prompting you. What will happen as we get signatures on our letters, I will be letting you know who is signed on and who we still need to target. And we'll have a deadline for that. Congress sets a deadline when everything needs to be submitted. We don't know what that deadline is yet. But you will get frequent emails from me saying, all right, we're at, 60 signatures, here's who we still need to get on board, who signed last year, but not hasn't signed this year. So we'll be doing that type of outreach to you. One thing that I find every year is that when you do your follow-up, sometimes you will get a form that your congressional office is going to ask you to complete. And certainly, if you need any help with completing those forms, you will be able to reach out directly to me, and I can help with that. Not every congressional office requests that, and I'm going to be giving you all adequate information to populate those forms, but I will be here to assist anyone who needs help with those forms.
Wonderful. Well, we do have a few more questions that actually are coming in as we speak. One of them is for advocates, especially that are stomachless. What's the best way to carry snacks around? Are there any issues with security?
No. So you can take snacks around. And the exception, and water, you can have water in your bag. The only exception is if we go into the Capitol. And if there's anybody that is actually going into the Capitol for a meeting, you'll know that in advance, and we will, you'll just have to plan accordingly, because there are strict rules in the Capitol for taking in liquids and food, but that is not the case for the House and the Senate buildings. So for 99.9% of you, there is no concern about what you can carry into the congressional offices. Once we get on site, if anyone has any questions or concerns, they can talk to me or talk to Megan or talk to any of the DDF staff, and we'll help you.
Perfect. Thank you for that. So I know we mentioned DDF business cards. Should anyone be bringing their professional business cards?
Yeah. So, Britt, I'll defer to you as well, but it's perfectly fine for you to give them your professional business cards unless you're not comfortable doing that. So that is typically what most advocates do. Or you can write your contact information on the inside of the folder that you're going to be giving to Hill staff, or on the fact sheet. You just want to be able to leave your contact information with them, your phone number or an email, so they know how to reach you if they have any questions.
Okay, wonderful. And this is more of a medically driven question, but can you talk about the difference between the cardia and the non-cardia that we mentioned as far as funding, or is that something maybe we can answer at a later time if that's asked during a meeting?
Yeah, I don't think it'll be asked during a meeting. Cardia versus non-cardia is where the malignancy forms in the stomach, and H. pylori has been more definitively linked to certain types of cancer, and specifically, I have to go back here and look, the non-cardia gastric cancer. And so you're not going to get that level of detailed questions, right? So if it's something that, if it's something that you want to talk about because you're a patient and you want to explain that, then that would be perfectly acceptable. It's a point that we just want to make in our fact sheets to say, look, we're seeing this huge decrease, and there is a reason for this decrease. But we also know that cancer, there's not a single type of stomach cancer, and the causes of those different types of stomach cancer, or where it occurs in the stomach, are different, and we need more research to understand that. We just don't understand it as well as we need to, in order to advance our understanding and consequently develop better treatments.
Wonderful. And one more question that came in just now. So when will we be notified of who everyone's scheduled to be meeting with? Does that happen on the Monday, the day of?
Yeah. So you're going to get
advocates arrive.
Yeah. So you're going to get your final schedules on Monday, with the caveat that there could be some changes from the time that you get them on Monday to when you go to the Hill on Tuesday. And if that happens, if there are changes, we will notify you of those changes in the morning before we head to Capitol Hill. Now, all of the meeting requests have been made, and some congressional offices are better than others in terms of their response, their timeliness of their response. So it is not uncommon that we will be a few days out from the lobby day, and there will still be meetings that are outstanding. It won't be because we haven't been bugging the heck out of them to schedule those meetings. What I'm going to try to do is get you all a list of the members of Congress where meetings have either been scheduled or a request is pending. It won't say the time because that will be moving around. It's a puzzle that we all have to piece together to make sure that we can get as many meetings scheduled for you during the afternoon as possible. So you'll get a list. It won't say exactly what time. It won't say if a meeting has been definitively scheduled yet or not, but that will at least allow you to do some background research so that there aren't any surprises. You'll be like, oh, a meeting with Representative Smith. I have no idea who Representative Smith is. This way you'll have a little bit of time to do some homework and take some notes and be familiar with the offices that you're gonna meet with. And this is something that we're doing new this year. We've always waited just to get the schedules on the day before, but we're gonna give you the names of the congressional offices that we're trying to schedule for you, so you have that information in advance.
Perfect. And I think part of the reason that I asked that question is because I think some of our advocates that are new this year have some connections to their representatives already and want some time to be able to maybe connect with them beforehand to let them know that they have a meeting and make sure that that is okay with the DDF staff and with you, Camille.
Yeah, so the only thing I would ask is, we are doing all of the scheduling. And as I said, it is a lot of arranging pieces of a puzzle, right? So we may have a meeting scheduled for 1 o'clock on Tuesday, and then someone comes in and says, well, I can only do 1 o'clock on Tuesday, so then we got to go back to the other office and we have to move that time. So there's a lot of juggling around that happens. If there is separate outreach to congressional offices, it can get very confusing for those offices. So all the meeting requests should come through us so that we can make sure that there is no overlap of meetings. The other thing I want to just emphasize here is that everyone is going to have a full schedule. Everyone is probably going to have around 6 or 7 meetings, maybe one less, maybe one more. And what we found is that the best way to arrange these schedules is for people to be in teams. So, for example, we have a lot of people coming from Texas. So we're going to break you up into teams, okay? Maybe another state, there's not as many advocates, or the congressional delegation is smaller, so maybe that'll be just one team. And we're going to have you move as your team, with a team, throughout the entire day. And I understand that some people have relationships with members of Congress that might not be from their state. We will try to accommodate those requests. If we can't, then that will be an office that you'll want to follow up with when you go home. The other thing is that I understand that some people live in one state, but they want to be with a family member in another state. We have taken note of that and accommodating those requests. The last piece here is that you all are going to have a couple extra folders. What we'll try to do is we'll try to put together a list of all of the congressional offices for each of the states where we have advocates coming. And you can look down that list. And so if you have, a half hour or an hour free, but you don't have a meeting with that office, then you may decide, hey, you know what, we're going to swing by that office and we're going to drop off a folder and we're going to see if maybe just someone happens to be available to talk to us. So you'll have a couple extra folders to do that. But for the vast majority of you, you are going to have very full days with quite frankly, very little time in between those meetings. So we're taking a little bit of a different approach this year to simplify the scheduling and to make the groups cohesive, right? So what you're going to find is after you do like the first meeting together or the second meeting together, you're going to have your your shtick down, well. You're going to know who's going to talk about what, and you're going to have kind of an ordering going, and you're going to get into a good flow. So it's actually really beneficial for you to stay with that group throughout the day.
Perfect. One more question, and I think this is on a lot of people's minds as they're traveling to DC. Do you, with your experience on the Hill, do you think there will be any conflicts with what's going on currently with the impeachment process and the meeting?
Oh boy. Yeah, so there's a couple things. I think first of all, on the House side, I don't foresee any issues. Depending on how long the trial goes on in the Senate, they could still be, all the senators may still be, essentially sitting as jurors for part of the day on Monday and Tuesday. As of right now, they are going to be convening as jurors every day of the week except Sunday. The Senate is still going to try to conduct business during this time. The upshot is that if it is still going on, the senators are going to be there, right? So a lot of times they don't fly in until Monday night or Tuesday morning because there's typically no votes on Monday. So the advantage is that if it is going on, the senators are going to be there. And so now, depending on what time they are convening proceedings, senators won't be available, right? So, there are, pros and cons to, obviously, to this situation in terms of our timing of being on the Hill. But in terms of like conflicts, protesters, that sort of thing, I don't, I never say never, but I don't envision any issues.
Perfect. Okay. That's wonderful, and I'm sure our advocates are happy to hear that as well. So I think I've covered all of the questions that came through. And if you have any more questions, and of course, thank you, Camille, for taking time out of your busy schedule to answer questions and give us an overview and a background. But if you have any additional questions, we're going to ask after we end the slideshow, or if you're listening to the recorded version of the slideshow, which we're going to send to all of the advocates who provided their emails. We're going to send a link for YouTube. So once the presentation ends, it'll probably take an hour or so to upload it to our YouTube channel, and then I'll be able to send it to all of the advocates so that everybody has an opportunity to view this afterwards if they weren't able to make it today. But if you do have any questions, Nicole is going to be your point of contact for Advocacy Day, and her email is events@debbiesdream.org. I do want to make note that Andrea's title is not Executive Director, it is Chief Executive Officer, so my apologies for that, for not changing that. The DDF staff that will be attending Advocacy Day is Andrea Eidelman, our CEO, Nicole, our Events Director, not Events Manager, and we have a new Programs Manager, Jackie. She goes by Jackie Bello. So she will be attending Advocacy Day with Andrea and Nicole. Her first day officially is Monday. For those of you that know or don't know, Britt, will be out on maternity leave as of this Friday, with a baby coming next week, so that's why we will not be attending Advocacy Day this year. I will miss all of you and really look forward to connecting with you guys in the future. And this is, a really great opportunity for those advocates that are coming that registered through our Prep Mentor Program or became involved through our mentor program to meet their mentors and meet advocates and come together. And so very sad to be missing it. Very happy for all of you to be able to connect and advocate this year with the staff. So thank you again for everyone who joined us today and are committing to travel with everything that you have going on in your lives. This is such an important event for Debbie's Dream Foundation for our 8th year. And of course, we want to thank Melanie and Christy for all of their hard work and support to make this possible again. And of course, we want to thank our sponsors because this year we have the most advocates that we have ever had coming to the Hill, and without the support of the Gastric Cancer Foundation, Stupid Strong, and No Stomach for Cancer, we would not be able to bring as many advocates as we are this year. So thank you again, Camille, and we look forward to seeing everybody in DC. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please call our office. Please call us, contact us. If we don't get back to you right away, call us. We'll definitely be able to walk you through any questions that you have. So thank you again, and safe travels to everybody, and take care.